Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. It's so good of you to join me here today. Now, today I want to take the time to review a very interesting article and then just give you a little bit of my own personal experience based on the information in this article. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just kind of highlight the key statistics here as far as it goes with what's going on with college education and kind of the shifting demographics of the United States because I think it's kind of interesting as to what's happening. And I want to give you a little bit of a personal story about what's actually happening here. Now, if you read the title, it says women now make up almost 60% of college students, an all time high. And we'll just read the first paragraph here. The most recent data shows that female students make up the majority of colleges across the nations. The Wall Street Journal, the publication examined data from nonprofit research group National Student Clearinghouse, found that for the 2020-21 academic year, 59.5% of college students were women. That's despite the overall college and university enrollment falling by 1.5 million students over the past 5 years. And I think this is actually like it's kind of it's a bittersweet story. So on one end, it's really good to see a greater participation amongst women in higher education because historically, if you go back to 50s and 60s, with more rigid gender roles that used to exist in those eras, women were often discouraged from pursuing a higher education. And it's kind of great to see the reversal of this trend. But on the other end, it kind of shows you what's going on in this with college education as a whole and why it's kind of becoming a lot less important. Now, I'm going to share a personal story of my experience of getting two college degrees, one that did absolutely nothing for me, and the second one that I was actually the one that was more important. Now, I went to college right after high school, and for most of my life, up until especially in high school and middle school, at that point, I was told that college education is the way to go. There's no other option than college if you wanted to succeed. And I went pursued a business degree because I thought I'd go to college and I'd learn practical skills. I thought college was more like a trade thing, like you go in, you learn, and it's like you learn the skills of a business. But instead, I mean, to be fair, like I realized pretty quickly, maybe my second year, that what I was really doing is just like I was doing prep work to just show employers that I had the commitment to do 4 years, and I just kind of grinded through without really being pragmatic about it of the actual work I was doing. Like for my business degree, I was spending time writing essays and going to a bunch of classes that didn't even have anything to do with business most of the time. There's a couple of really practical courses that I really liked and I wish I could have taken more of. The actual project management courses, scheduling courses, and things like that. But other than that, like I'd say about like 70 to 80% of my courses had like just absolutely no positive affect on my ability to get a job, to start a business, or do anything of the sort. They really just kind of were there as fillers to just kind of waste my time and make me just go and pay a bunch of money for a bunch of stuff that didn't even really relate or was going to apply to me in my career. And on top of that, 2008 happened right after, right before I actually went to school, and right after I graduated, the effects of that still continued. I graduated into an economy where I remember looking at a lot of various different states like California, Montana, and I was going around in between like both those places at that time looking for a job. And in that time, like it was kind of strange because it's like the unemployment rate was high, and while I was in college, I thought I was going to immediately get into a better position. When I was in college, I had jobs that paid me, $8, $9 an hour. Mind you, this was like over a decade ago. And when I got out of college, I immediately went into like I had to take jobs that paid me substantially less. Like I remember making like $9.50 an hour at one of my jobs in college, and then I had to take a job just so I could afford basic necessities at $8 an hour. Just working in retail, or changing tires and doing that stuff. And it's not that I'm saying that those jobs are beneath me. And they taught me quite a lot of lessons in life, and I've taken those jobs. Even after I went back to school later, I still did retail and bartending and service jobs because I never viewed them as being lesser than or anything else like that. And so I always viewed them as important, and I have a lot of solidarity with the folks that do those kinds of jobs because I've done them myself. But they just don't pay the bills, and it's not what you expect. I expected that if I got a degree, I was going to get a better job coming out, not that you get a degree, here's a bunch of debt. And luckily, I went to school in Montana, so I didn't end up with as much debt as some of the folks I knew in like California and other places have ended up with debt. So I ended up with very little debt. And at that time, housing and everything else was cheap. So while I was able to get a job in college, it was really easy to pay your way through college at that time because I said housing and rents were cheap. It was after the collapse. So going through college didn't really cost me a lot the whole first time. And at some point, I realized it's like I got to get back in, challenge myself, and get an actual degree. And it said like, and this is just my opinion. I don't think that business degree was an actual degree. And I've told a lot of folks this. I said like, don't make the mistake I'd have. Actually, be pragmatic. Get something that gives you actual skills. And I went into engineering. I went back. I started with computer science. Realized that I hated programming, and I went and did electrical engineering. And I graduated with that a few years ago. And that's actually was interesting because half of my class were people my age, and a couple of folks who kind of had the same experience I did. They went in, they got a degree they didn't like, they had a job that was crappy, and they were like, "What are we doing?" Right? And like they just went back and did that. And the other half were people who were like younger, like more Gen Z types, who were like, "Well, we're getting a degree because this is where the money's at." They made a very pragmatic choice, and that's actually what's happening here. I believe is I think a lot of folks are applying that research, and I talked about this in my previous video about Gen Z and how they're going to affect climate change, is that people are making that choice, okay, based on the information. And we have more information now than when I did when I was making a decision about to go to college, because everything has at least a rating attached to it, and there's data, and then there's social media posts talking about these universities, the campus experiences, and the kind of job placement programs they have. Campuses were, they could notoriously just say like, we have X amount of percentage points of people graduating, but like there was no way of really verifying it other than taking the word and just the reputation of a certain college or school back in the day. But now you do, and I think I think the cat's out of the bag, and I think people are realizing that most of these degrees aren't worth much. Okay, and I think this particularly affects younger men more so because I think they tend to view education more pragmatically through the prism of work as to the kind of work they want to do, and the kind of things that they want to accomplish with their degree. And it's just a simple economic choice to them that's a lot more I'm going to say a lot more short term driven, because they look at it and say, you got to go into school, pay thousands of dollars into debt, and then you have to at the same time take a risk on coming out of college and getting a job and succeeding at that. And I think like on the other end of it, I think women are tending to look at it also pragmatically, but from a different point, where they tend to look at it more term. Whereas like it's statistically proven that college education tends to fare, people with college educations tend to fare better and are more likely to climb the ladder into the middle, and upper classes of society, economically speaking. So it's kind of a clash there of perceptions and views with college education. And the other part of it too is I think I said like a lot of the folks I went to high school with, a lot of the guys I went to school with, they just went straight into trade. I mean, they were just like, why would I waste any time in that, like trying or anything else like that? And some folks just like kind of realized that with some of these degrees, they were like, well, this is useless because I'm already doing something I go to study anyway. Like I had an acquaintance a town over in Bozeman, Montana, and this fellow was making movies. He was really good like for photography and cinematography and all this other stuff. He was already making movies like when he was living there. Always kind of like this indie producer at that point. And then he went to college in Oregon, paid $20,000 for a year, and then realized that he was spending money to go study what he already knew. And he was like, why am I doing this? This is a hobby. This is a passion. And I think a lot of folks are having that realization. Okay, and that's what I said. Like it's kind of interesting here because I think like in this figure, like the overall figure is down. Right, it doesn't matter men, women, doesn't matter. Right, and I just want to make it clear that that's kind of like one of those things that's happening here. And the other interesting part of it is the fact that like you do have this continual distrust in these institutions because as I said, like I think a lot of millennials, particularly folks like myself, who've just gotten like I said, like we just got like screwed in a lot of ways because it like You read these stories, you see the social media posts, you see folks talking about it. You can't not be pragmatic about it. College education is extraordinarily expensive. America doesn't have paid for public college. It's subsidized in a lot of ways that allows people to take on massive loans at the age of 18. I mean, no other institution, which is kind of interesting. It's like if you look at it from a purely pragmatic financial standpoint, no other institution is going to give 18-year-olds the ability to take on $100,000 worth of loans. Doesn't matter what it is, a business. It doesn't matter if it's like you're buying a car, a boat, a plane, or nothing. But they will give $100,000 to 18-year-olds to go pursue a college education. I have mixed views on this. I think at one point that's a good thing, but another point it creates a moral hazard because you're allowing people to pursue something without fully understanding the implications of that, right? And technically, yes, at 18 you're an adult, but at the same time you also will change your personality more times than you'll change your underwear before you hit the age of 30. And I'm speaking here from personal experience as somebody who used to be 18 and stupid and wanted a lot of different things. And I've changed my point on my personality and my beliefs, and even like most of like maybe with the exception of a couple of hobbies, like I almost feel like I'm a completely different person since I was 18. And like I said, I made the more pragmatic choice in my mid 20s and I made the wrong choice in my teens. And I think that reverberates a lot with folks, men, women, everybody alike. And that's why you see these things go down. Anyway, if you made it this far into the video, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. I hope you learned something. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like this video, if you like these kinds of conversations that we're having, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll talk to all of you later.